Let's stay with the story. Joining us is Action SA's Eastern Cape chairperson, Athol Trollip. A very good evening to you. Thank you so much for your time. We have been speaking to various community members who've been affected by this devastation, looking and assessing the impact of these floods this time around. What have you encountered?
Good evening, Paul. Thanks very much. I have personally not been to Port St. John since the flooding, but we have a regional coordinator there. Her name is Nomakabiso Tsaweni. She has given me a comprehensive report. Apparently, around 11 a.m. On Thursday morning, about 200 mils of rain fell, which is an extraordinarily high amount of rain. The flooding in the town itself didn't take place because of the Umsumvubu bursting its banks. The flooding took place because of the high deluge of rain that fell over the town. And there is a creek that runs through that town that is very heavily polluted and silted up, which the water flowed over its banks. And also the town is notoriously badly administered, and all the stormwater drainage is blocked. So within a few minutes, the town was underwater, and this has become almost an annual affair. The Premier of the Eastern Cape was there the following day on Friday, and he made a commitment that disaster management teams and provincial departmental teams would go and look at the infrastructure, because what is of major concern is that this town and this area is exposed to more and more of this kind of flash flooding. And if you don't have adequate infrastructure to take that water off, there's going to be a big problem. The other issue is that the Umsumvubu River itself is heavily silted. And if there's a big deluge upstream of that major river, Port St. John's will be even more threatened. So it's clear that this area is receiving much higher than average rainfall in the last couple of years, and that this is going to be an ongoing problem. And a number of bridges have been washed away, and the road to the second beach has been washed away. So there's been some significant infrastructure damage in Port St. John's.
With this set to be an ongoing problem, there have been calls for a state of disaster to be declared. How do you think it will assist?
Look, I think a state of disaster is probably necessary. There were lives lost, and some emergency attention needs to be given to the stormwater infrastructure and also that creek that I spoke about that is heavily polluted and silted. But this can't be a disaster management intervention every time there's a flood. There has to be ongoing management and maintenance of floodwater infrastructure. And if there isn't adequate floodwater infrastructure and drainage in the town of Port St. John's, the government and the municipality are going to have to do something about it, because it's clear that this town gets flooded regularly. Last year there was a big flood, and previously in 1986 there was a massive flood when the Umsumvubu broke its bank. So there's a problem in Port St. John's. It's a very narrow area between two very high cliffs, and the water gets channeled through there, and obviously not enough attention is given to the maintenance and management of stormwater and flooding infrastructure.
There have been calls by residents for government to assist in rebuilding houses. I mean, do you think that that could be one way to intervene and also look at the long-term plan with Port St. John's?
Well, first of all, I would venture that rebuilding houses under the current situation would be a futile exercise. What you've got to do is you've got to make sure that stormwater management and that there are adequate levees and stormwater drainage to make sure that that town isn't annually flooded. That would be the first thing. Thereafter, the government could look at repairing houses, but that is actually not the mandate of the state to repair or build new houses. The mandate of the municipality and the provincial departments and the national departments is to maintain infrastructure so that communities and towns don't get flooded regularly, and that's not being done at the moment.
I'd like for you to stay with us as I go to our reporter, Siposetu Boy, who joins us live from Port St. John's. Siposetu, very good evening to you. What are you finding on the ground as the community continues to call for assistance?
Well, for the very first scene, just now that it's midnight, we moved to the youth center. That's where some of the displaced villages have been placed, of course, by the OR Tambo municipality. I met Uma Munowisile Jamjam, and upon me approaching her and asking her for the interview, I had asked her to please join me to where I was standing. And I noticed that she was walking bare feet, so I had asked Mama where her shoes were, and she said she lost everything. The only attire she has is the one that she's currently wearing now. She lost everything from her house to her clothes, including blankets. She only has a blanket that she'll be sleeping in inside the youth center, and she joins us now. Mama, unowisile. Ngokusifikayo ndichazela ngokenye iyekho yoxabana into yoba ndithe ndicela ukunxiba izihlangu mama wathi awunazihlangu esi sehlo senhle ngoLwesine ebusuku kwenzeke ntoni mama uve ntoni
ngoLwesine ebusuku iye yana kakhulu imvula inendudumo inomoya ekuseni xa ndivuka ngofo uba ndisiya apho ndibambe khona isikolobo kwabe noko kunqamkile kodwa kusakhwitsha ndihambile ndofika emsebenzini kungolosihlanu kuya kwanetha phaa ngolosihlanu emini kumane kunika isiqabu kodwa kwenzekile into yobana phaa emva kwa 11-12 yabuya imvula ngamandla xa nditshayisa phaya ngo-2 ukuphuma kwabantwana besikolo nditshayise imvula seyixakile sebengasakwazi kokuwela abantu apha etawuni esajonisi amanzi xa ndandiwela ayema apha esinqini ezantsi kwamabele ndiphumile khonapho sihambe ke ngoku sayijekhwa ngabantu besibamba besikhupha kula manzi kudada amanzi imifula xa singaseposini yasesajonisi ngasetawuni hall kulapho besisenyulwa khona ngabantu besikhuphela ngaphandle xa ndifika apha kwaGreen njengoba mna ndingumhlali ohlala apha kwaGreen xa ndifika kwaGreen ndiyafika mna abantwana bam baqokolelene kwenye indawo enesiphaza esilapha abahleli khona bathi mama umzi awukho njengoba usibona sihleli apha akukho mzi akukho nto akukho nobungaphinde ungene phi uphelele ngoku kule ndawo ufika sikuyo sahamba nabantwana xa uqala ungathi ukuthi ncwazi basibamba abantwana bam abangamakhwenkwe besikhuphela kwelaa cala linalo mzi wam xa ndifika phayana ndifikele mna ndingenakwanto kuwe kwanto kungabonakali noba kungakho into endingathi ndingayitsala ezinye izinto iibhedi neebheyisi zazo zivele kancinci emdakeni phantsi komhlaba kudilike kwanto yadilikela kule ndlu yabhangqaka i-prefab ebendiyiphiwa ngurhulumente kulo nyaka yiyo le iphinde yenzekela le nto i-prefab ebendihlala kuyo nabantwana bam.
Mama uziva njani?
Andikho right.
Ngaske kwenza uncedo olungxamisekileyo
kwenza uncedo olukhawulezayo ngoba kule ndawo sibekwe kuyo apha kule holo sikuyo sisonke noogxa bam aba bakhoyo nifikele kubo sihleli nabo bakule meko ndikuyo kodwa bekule meko ndikuyo nje no kuwesi kakhulu kumxa ndihamba apha andizazi uba ndizoyolala phi.
That was Mama Unowisile Jamjam, who just paints a picture of how she got back from work, and as she was coming back to where she lives here in the Green Farm area. This is the Green Farm area. It's called the Green Farm area. Her children had let her know that their house had collapsed. They no longer have a place to come home to. There's nothing they can call home, and she could see blankets and just pieces of the mattress and the blankets that they had just placed there within the mud. So she lost everything. The only thing that she has with her right now is the dress that she's currently wearing and her duke. And I know that some of the residents who are also here at the youth center also say the same thing. They lost everything. And kids can't go to school tomorrow because they don't have school uniform. And there are young children here from the ages of 3 up until 14, male and female, will be sleeping at this particular youth center. That's where most of the displaced villagers have been placed here at the OR Tambo. district in Port St. Johnson.
Very well, Siposetu Boy, painting a very heart-wrenching picture out at Port St. John's. Of course, speaking about the impact of the devastation. We're still joined on the line by ActionSA Eastern Cape Chairperson Athol Trollip, listening into to some of the devastation that residents have encountered. Things like we have nothing on our backs, we have nowhere else to go. Where do we go? How much assistance, how much assistance do you think the residents will need, and how much, as ActionSA, are you assisting within this devastation?
Well, first of all, it's obviously a really tragic tale. Listening to Umamu Nowisile narrating what happened was really awful. But I listened carefully, and she said that she was living in a temporary shelter that had been provided for her by the government. Now, the question is she in a temporary shelter because the same thing had happened to her before? And if it is, it just reinforces the fact that the government seems to have to deal with these periodic floods. And we all understand that there is climate change, and these severe weather patterns are starting to manifest themselves in the northeastern part of our province with regular occurrence. And we're starting to see things that we've never seen before, like cyclones and extreme heavy deluges. So this is an issue, and Umamu Nowisile and people like her and all the other kids that won't be able to go to school tomorrow because they've lost everything and that 10 bridges have been washed away, is going to make life very, very awkward for that community. So we support any call to declare this area a disaster area, and we will do whatever we can to make sure that that happens so that the necessary attention is given to all those people that were affected by those floods. But I do want to just state that a stitch in time saves 9, and if you do the proper maintenance of stormwater infrastructure and prevent pollution and plastic and garbage and stuff being swept into those stormwater drains, and the creek that runs through the town of Port St. John's needs to be kept clean and free of silt and rubbish and litter and reeds, so that when there are higher incidents of rainfall, that water can run into the Umzimbubu River and into the sea. If that is not done, this is going to be a regular occurrence, and before long, I'll be back on the same program talking about the same thing. And my colleague on the ground there, Nomakabiso Tsaweni, has been into Port St. John's. She's spoken with the community. They've mobilized the attention of the local authorities as well as the KSD, not KSD, Oliver Regional Tambo District Municipality, and obviously, as I said, the Premier himself was there on Friday, so he's fully aware of what's required there, and we expect them to do the necessary.
Very well. Thank you so much for weighing in there. ActionSA's Eastern Cape Chairperson Athol Trollip speaking to the impact of the devastating floods in Port St. John's.